to order. Item number 2, discuss possibly approve the minutes of the June 14th, 2020 regular meeting.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item number 3, discuss possibly approve the minutes of the June 30th, 2022 special meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Petitions from the audience, knowing of none. Item number 5, mayor's report. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chairman. You have in your packet the tax reports, and I won't spend too much time on the tax reports, except to make the comment that when you add the sales tax and use tax, tobacco tax comes to a total of $11,544,233.46. That compares to last year's total of those three items came to $10,780,791.14, and we're up about 7% from last year. We were up last year from the previous year a little bit, not very much, but we were up a little bit, and we continue to grow in our sales tax and our use tax categories. Our tobacco tax, however, I mean, some of that work that we're doing in schools and hopefully around the community is working, because that tobacco tax is down to $82,000 from $92,000 last year. So that's. Do you have any questions for me regarding the tax numbers?
I do not. Nope, no, you're on.
Could I move to item C on the agenda?
Yes.
All right. Or item B on the agenda, and if I can kind of combine those two. The financial status of our city is healthy. It is healthy. Our bond funds continue to come in, really projecting more of the bond funds coming in than what was projected, because our numbers are up. I hope that our numbers continue to be up, and that's only good for all of us and good for our financial status. Regarding the general fund budget review, I just want to talk with you, if I might, just about the general fund. So the general fund includes all of the 200 numbers in our budget. And so the general fund, I mean, you can go through all of those, and we have the general government item. We have, which is the 201 fund. We have the 203 fund, which is community development. We have an item on the 203 fund that makes the 203 fund this year compared to last year quite a bit more, because we've added a city planner or city development coordinator / city planner, and we've added a clerk, and that's what pays out of that item pays out of the 203 fund. Also, I continue to try to budget our EDTA, $50,000 out of that fund, and then we'll transfer that out of that fund over to the 98 fund, which is the EDTA fund. The reason why that's separate is because EDTA has the opportunity to sell property, to actually the indenture gives them the opportunity to make loans. It gives them the opportunity to borrow money and to pay interest on that borrowed money. So having that separate Fund 98 for the EDTA is important. Since EDTA is young, has not been around very long, I continue to want to try to prop up that organization to be able to do some things that's according to their trust indenture. So I continued to budget that $50,000 in there and then transfer that over to EDTA. The 205 fund, planning zoning, there's not too much that we do in that. That fund will actually do some things to fund our city planner as that city planner works. So you've got miscellaneous mapping, that's something that we have expense from time to time, and then some general supplies, and then some periodicals and publications. That's important for that position to be able to be aware of. 207 is the managerial salaries. My salary, Darla's salary comes out of that item, and then some of the expenses that that I have comes out of the managerial item, which is the 207 item. The 209 item, the clerks, most of the clerks supplies, we spend out of that item for office supplies. We spend out of that item for when we replace equipment that might come into City Hall here. Normally, that's where that is going to come from. And then the 211, the attorney, our city attorney, that's the fund that city attorney is paid from. The 213, our city treasurer is paid from that fund. When we get over to police, the 215, of all the funds out of the general fund, the police takes probably more than any of the others at this year at $4,144,000. Most of the increases that we see have to do with personnel, have to do with personnel expense and benefits. So our insurance went up. I proposed a 4% cost of living allowance to all city employees because honestly, we have very good employees. In order to keep them in this job market, knowing that their cost of living has gone up anywhere from 8 to 15%. Right. And to be able to try to mitigate that with a cost of living allowance, I think is appropriate for our city employees. So when you see that $4,144,000 on the police budget, yeah, there's stuff in there that's for uniforms. We've budgeted 3 new policemen, and when you do that, you also budget the items that they're going to need for their uniforms, the items that they're going to need for their training. All of those things go into budgeting for the police for the police department. So we're a real safe community, and we want to stay that way. And funding the police is one of the ways that we're able to do that. Yes.
So remind me about the technology. Is this because of the new station?
Okay.
The $50,000 difference in the technology proposed?
So actually, there was a line item last year for technology at the very bottom, account 5491, for that $43,000, and it looks like that was just added and combined with this 5260 account.
Correct. It was.
Okay.
But your
Oh, I see.
specific question, though, you're on item 5260. Is that correct?
Yes, and
Okay.
then where the strike on 5419, that was 2 separate things last year and just combined?
Yeah, on the 5419, we're not funding anything on police technology because we actually had that in there twice,
Okay,
and it didn't make sense to have it in there twice.
okay.
So, but yes, so yes and no. You know, is some of that going to be utilized? James Willier can speak maybe a little more confidently about that. Most of that police technology, though, is going to be in the technology that goes for the officers. Their technology is changing all the time. Did I speak correctly about that?
Yes, sir.
Their technology is changing all the time. So the lion's share of that is going to go toward the officers and equipping the officers. When we have new officers, when we budget new officers, then we also keep up to date with that technology. If we don't keep up to date with it, then criminals are the criminals got one up on us. We don't want that to happen. Did I speak correctly about that? Thank you. So I'm going to check with them so they can verify my opinions about it. Also, then go, any more questions about police department? Going on to the 216, the animal shelter, I'd like to point out number 5411 down there at the bottom of the animal shelter capital outlay. We have been trying to get some repair work done to the animal shelter now for a couple of years.
For a long time.
And that's the reason why that's in there, and perhaps we will find a contractor who wants to do that work. That's all pretty well standard stuff. The 217, the fire department, that's the next most expensive item that we have in our general fund budget, and rightfully so. Our repair and maintenance, we put more money in that item this time. We also put more money in the fire utilities this time by quite a bit. We have our new police and fire station, and we don't know how those utilities are going to be divided out. We don't know what it's going to cost us to heat and cool and the new facility. So that's more of a guess than anything else. But we felt like it was appropriate to budget what we felt like we might need. You see the clothing allowance is up because we also have budgeted new firemen as well, and so that's up on the fire department. Next item, the 219, the park salaries and wages, all of that's up to 4%. You see that note down in at the bottom part of that page, item 5099. You see the park pool repair and maintenance. Well, we're not really sure what that's going to be. Hopefully, we're going to have a new swimming pool in a relatively short amount of time. That's what the objective is, and that's what the target is. So knowing that, budgeting money for repair and maintenance is an estimate, but it's something that we need to do. Budget money's in there for that. In the last presentation that I made on the item 5012, the park wages, pool, personnel, and management. Well, you see that that's at $13,000. Well, that $13,000 for that will be half this year and half next fiscal year. And we budgeted the $26,000 in the year before, and that actually was a mistake. That should have been down at 13 as well. And now you see the park temporary employees of 22,000 last year and only 13 this year for the temporary employees. Last year we were working through trying to get permanent employees on, and we needed more of the temps last year than we have needed this year, or than we're projecting we're going to need the following year. So you see the park part of it is just $3,000 more than it was last year. So Frank does a good job of managing that. And I know you've heard all this before, but in talking through this general fund budget, when we refer back to the 201 item, which is the general government item, all of this has to do with the other parts. We break these down so that we break these down in categories as we work our general fund. So let me go on to libraries, the next one, and that is up primarily because of the raise in the wages. And then the emergency management on item 225. Well, I passed over the cemetery, the item 223. That's fairly flat from what it was last year. The only difference there, repair and maintenance on the backhoe and the utilities, we bumped that up a little bit. We also bumped our gas and oil up a little bit. If you notice that gasoline and fuel is starting to come down, we hope that it continues to trend down like that. So that was cemetery, the emergency management, the CEM, there we fund that, and that's Johnny Jansen. And we fund half of his wages, we share that with the county. Item 231, which is a court, we also have a clerk comes out of that item. And then on the very last page, you see the budgetable amount of $10,173,637. So that is all of the general fund budget. It comes from the general fund. That's the fund that we have the 90% rule, that we can only budget 90% of the previous year's receipts. So you know that the previous year, so for 22-23, we haven't closed out our books yet. So, I'm sorry.
21-22, you mean?
Yeah, for 21-22, we've not closed out our books yet. So 90% of 21-22 is what we're able to budget for 22-23. Well, here we are talking about our 22-23 budget, but we have not closed our books out yet. So once our books close, then we will have the completely accurate number of budgetable amount that we'll find at the end of that last page. And it likely will be different than that 10,173,637, just by virtue of the fact of us being able to close out our books.
But you also have to budget 90%. There has to be
Yes.
somewhere where that 90%
Correct.
is destined to go.
Yes,
You can't just put it, we're gonna do 60% of that and save the rest of it. You can't do that.
No.
It all has to be put into the budget.
the 90% all has to be budgeted. So when our city accountant, Jeff Coker, comes out with that number, that budgetable amount, then what we then do is we take that budgetable amount and we plug that into all these different funds, all these different categories.
It doesn't mean that we have to spend it all, but it has to be put in the budget.
Absolutely. So it is our responsibility before the citizens and statutes that we have a city budget. So we have to budget those amounts. So as I've talked through the general fund, the thing that has been in question most has been the general government portion of the general fund, which is this 201 item. I have asked Jeff to answer some what-if questions, okay? Now, Choya does more of the what-if questions than anybody I know. That's good. We need to ask those questions. We need to consider those things. I'm kind of like a bulldozer in that I get going on a path and I write it down and I consider all these things, but have always needed someone to ask the what-if questions, and so it's still that way. And so you have this page. You have this page in your packet as well. So if we could refer to that page. And if you don't have that page, I'm going to take some time.
It's behind it, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it should be right behind the minutes.
No, yeah.
Okay, this is a different deal there. That's the years that.
That's what it was.
allocated funds.
Yeah.
So, are you looking at that page?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, this page can be confusing, so what I asked Jeff to do is to give us some what-if scenarios. And so he gave us five different scenarios here. Scenario one, if you look all the way down at the bottom, some assumptions, revenues, if they were flat, expenses were 100% of revenues, our budget would be the same. Scenario number two, assumptions, if the revenues are flat and we spend all but $200,000, the next year's budget would be about $8 million rather than the 10 if our budget was flat. So scenario number three, assumptions, if the revenues were up 5% and we spent $8 million of the funds, then the total budget would be 10,761 if the revenues were up 5%. Scenario number four, let's say our revenues were down 5%. We would only be able to budget $7,259,000. If our revenues were up 10% and we spent $9 million, our budget for the next year would be $10,502,000. So you can see how the what affects the budget for the next year is what we spend during the year and also the receipts that
we
come
take
in. What we spend during the year, we always try not to spend all of our budget. So if you look at the complete budget, seldom do we ever spend
Correct.
more than 80% of the previous year's funds. Some of the departments will spend some 70%, 78%, 75%. So we are on course this year to spend out of the 201 fund there's unexpended about $1.4 million. Well, the reason for that is because of we budgeted $1.2 million in unallocated reserves. Well,
Is that one?
so out of a budget of $1.9 million, we've only spent $523,000 out of that fund, out of that 201 fund. So we have to budget, we have to have the guide of the budget, and we have to follow state statutes when we create the budget. So some of the questions that have come up, holy cow, last year you had $1.2 million in unallocated reserves, and this year you've only got, well, with this new take, because I went through and I trimmed everything down as much as I possibly could.
Right.
And when you do that, you don't change the total at the end. What you do is you add, if you trim down, then you add to the unallocated reserves. So at $355,000 is what this new take is on Fund 201.
That was what it was that they approved on the 30th.
Yeah, this is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
319.
I'm sorry, 355 is what you approved on 30th. Yes, and so after the tweaking, 319,896.
That still leaves us with $959,637.25 in that unallocated fund if we spent the full 319,896, correct?
So if you're taking one and and subtracting the other and saying, what is that number? Yeah, that's right. So if we think about it from the perspective, our carryover, which Jeff has put our carryover on this sheet,
Yep.
the $3.2 million.
Yep.
The carryover, we add the carryover to the formula in budgetable amount, and we do that every year.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why that we have the 10 million in budgetable amount is because of the carryover that we have had. So the carryover that we have had, the carryover stays, and it stays in that fund. We're going to add to that carryover this year. If we spent every bit of our budget, then we would add $319,000 to the carryover.
Right.
Is what we would add. But we never do spend all of our budget. We never do intend to spend all of our budget, but we are required to create a budget that we operate from. And that's the reason we go through this process. Another item that you have on your desk, I asked Lisa Malone to give me a budget worksheet for salaries, wages, benefits, just having to do with the general fund, not including any of the, not the rec center, not the golf course, or the street department, just the general fund. And the total wages and benefits coming out of the general fund is $7,800,000.
Right.
So of that budgetable amount, the 10 million, 10 million two, I believe is what it is. 7.8 million of that is wages and benefits.
And this 7.8 is including the cost of living increases.
Yes, it is. It includes the cost of living increase. It also includes the added positions of the city planner and the clerk for
And
the city planner.
What about the
3
police and
police and
fire?
3 fire.
And the 3 police and the 3 fire. So that's all added into that. One of the things that I should point out on the 201 item is that on this new take on number 5091, not knowing what City Hall addition, well, we know what the City Hall addition is going to cost, but we do not know what the kitchen in the Graham Community Building to restore that. We don't know what that's going to cost. There's a structural engineer going to be in there on Thursday morning, and that structural engineer will make some recommendations, and then we'll be able to go out for bid and have some idea about what that would cost. Also, the exterior of the chamber building, I have that on there, and not sure what that's going to cost. I don't anticipate for that to be really expensive, but I did take that item from 200,000 down to 100,000, just trying to be a little more accurate about it. So, also the City Hall addition, I think we talked about that the other night. That's also in the 201 fund, and that addition plus the furnishings was going to be somewhere around $37,000. So I've done quite a bit of talking about this budget. Do you have questions that I can ask?
Could we go into 02-201-5075?
5075, general outside services. Yes, sir?
Okay.
It jumped from 85,000 to 169,000.
Okay, and it did that because I had not added the paddock projected cost for design work on our new swimming pool.
Mhm.
So the previous item did not have his numbers in there, so that's what that is.
Then FIT is for fiber.
Fiber interactive technologies.
That's all the communication and everything and all the computer work and everything.
Yes,
And then the one SG is the,
the ISG,
or
that's,
ISG, excuse me,
that's Infrastructure Solutions Group, that's our city engineer.
Steve Howe. Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted everybody to know what those were.
So about $84,000 of the $169,000 is Paddock Enterprises.
Mhm.
Okay. And that was already discussed at one of our city council
Well, I
meetings.
think we approved it at
Yes, we
city
did.
council.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
On the swimming pool, I feel like before we invest too much, we need to get some numbers on, does the city actually support it? And would they support it? And, because I've heard a lot of people say
I've heard it go back and forth as well.
back and forth. And so
Mhm.
I don't know that we would have, if it came to a bond, I don't know that we would have the support for the bond. So I almost feel like we need to do something to determine, or some type of commitment. I don't know how you get that. I don't know.
Well, I think we're probably as far as we can go on bonds. I don't think we can get another one. We're pretty much maxed out, I believe, aren't we?
Well, the point, though, is that she's making is not necessarily about the money part of it, but will the citizens support it?
Support it.
Well, and about the money, so if it's not a potential bond, would the citizens support $4 million out of the budget to build a pool?
Mhm.
Well, we already know that it's not going to cost $4 million, so a new pool might cost
Right, a new
$4
pool,
million.
right.
Mhm.
But renovation of this pool that we have now is what our aim is to do.
Okay.
And that is estimated to be somewhere around $800,000.
Okay.
So, one of the things that I will not support is promoting an expense based on a concept. So you can ask an architectural engineer to conceptually say, what is this going to cost? You know, and he's going to say, conceptually, this is what it's going to cost. But we don't have any idea what it's going to cost until he does the architectural plan
Right.
and comes up with real hard costs.
Mhm.
And so that's what Mr. Paddock's doing. That's what we agreed to pay him to do, because we believe that the citizens want a park swimming pool. So, in trying to follow what the citizens, what I can glean the citizens want, then, or what we can, we together
Right.
have done that, because we sit on city council. We together have done that, and so that's a step in that direction. Any other questions? Choi, don't you have any questions?
Well, you've just about covered them.
Covered
Yeah,
questions I had.
we need to talk about the senior citizen program. We approved, which is 02-201-5345, the senior citizen program, Saratoga. And we bounced it up from 5,000 to 22,000, and that's already been passed by
City council.
council. So that was another one that was raised quite a bit.
It was, and as time goes by, their needs change. I looked back on their requests for funding over the years, and they have requested $25,000. They've requested $16,000. For the last several years, they've requested only $5,000, and we've been happy to award them the $5,000. They supervise the building.
Right.
Over there. They have, they send out meals every day to our senior citizens. And
I had one other thing, I was trying to figure out where that was.
So they came and made that plea, if you remember, about a month ago. And so I did put that in the budget to support that program. If council, council approves it, then we'll cut a check to them for the $22,000.
The only other question I've been asked by citizens is on redoing the kitchen in the community building. What will be the purpose for the community building? How does that serve the community?
Okay, so about 6 weeks ago, I get a call from our maintenance person, Gary Buffington. And he says, Mayor, the ceiling in that kitchen is sagging down, and I'm afraid it's going to fall in. So I went over and looked at it. I mean, it was sagging down. Well, the structure up above, something was going on there. We hired a contractor to come in and support that ceiling up, to build supports under that ceiling, so that we didn't have anything falling through itself. Then we cut a hole in it, sent a light up there, and try to look and see what's going on with it. So there's a structural problem there that is playing out, and that ceiling is really sagging down. So that's a matter of repairing something that we own. Your question was, what are we going to do with that kitchen? Well, eventually, hopes are that we'll restore that building, including the kitchen. And that kitchen will be a workable kitchen to where we're able to, people are able to come in, they're able to prepare meals and able to kind of restore the Graham Community Building to what it was intended for.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
And that's all I
I was
have.
just,
If I could draw your attention to item 5032, the dues and subscriptions. The Oklahoma Municipal League, we're a member of the Oklahoma Municipal League, and they create great benefit for us in training in lots of departments. And that $15,000 to them is fee for those services. I added in the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce in that item. That's a $6,000 annual dues for cities and municipalities. Tulsa Regional Chamber, it's not just the Tulsa Chamber, it's a regional chamber that reaches out to many of the communities around Tulsa. And there's benefit to us, especially if we're growing, and which we are growing. Our housing starts are up. We've started new businesses, and to be part of that Tulsa Regional Chamber gives us credibility, and it helps put something out there to sell us to businesses and to developers and to hotel groups, all kinds of things, because they promote us as well as we promote us. And so it's another item that has benefit to us. And the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce spreads out, and most of these, I shouldn't say most of these towns, probably half of the towns that surround Tulsa are members of that Tulsa Regional Chamber. Skytook is one of them. Owasso is one of them. Wagner is one of them. Coweta is one of them. Catoosa is one of them. You might say, well, we're out far enough. But the exposure that we had through the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Oklahoma Department of Commerce is important, that we're included in those promotional items, and it speaks well of us, and it puts us out there. So I think there's benefit to it.
One other question, it's just a point of interest. When you get down to the end part of your 203, it's the community development is the 203 section.
Uh-huh.
But when you get down to the totals, it says building inspector total. And we've had people thinking, are they going to hire a bunch of more building inspectors or what we happen? So I think that probably
Just the
needs to be
language.
explained, yeah.
I think we updated the name of that budget line item, and it probably didn't get changed on my spreadsheet.
Okay,
At the bottom.
okay,
It's
That's probably,
at the
that's
very,
probably
very bottom.
an error I need to.
okay, that's fine. I just had people said, are we going to hire a whole new crew of inspectors or something? Because it's something like $354,000 worth of them. That's a pretty good crew. But anyway, that
Yeah,
was
so
something
that-
that we've been,
Does that answer that question? $304,000 is that whole item? of-
right, and it shouldn't be building inspector total. It should be,
It's just a description.
I'll
Yeah.
fix that before council for sure.
thank you, no problem.
If I could talk to you about building inspector, all the building inspector activity does pay out of the general fund, okay? Part of it pays out of 203, almost all of it pays out of the 203. Not all of it, but most of it pays out of 203. So you see the assistant building inspector item, that's item 5015. And you see the $30,000 there, and then you see over the notes, contract employee. Okay, well, we have two contract employees who assist us with building inspection. And then we have another that helps us with that when we get in a pinch.
Are they the gentleman out of?
And his name is Steve Powell.
Well, right.
We
But
have one out of
there's
Stillwater.
Stillwater and
Yes.
Okie City, Oklahoma
So
City.
Craig Higley out of Stillwater and
Jim Lawler,
Jim Lawler out of Inola.
We don't know, okay.
Both of them are paid out of that line item.
Okay.
And then Steve Powell does that, then I believe we pay him out of the 201 for that service.
That'll fall under that line item we were talking about earlier, that 5075 general outside services.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is there
No,
any
I
other?
was just checking to see how much we had actually spent on the assistant building inspector out of that line item, and we've overexpended it about 13,000, so,
Right,
because of all the need.
yep.
That's a good problem?
Yes, it is.
That is a good problem.
That's a
to
good
have.
problem.
It is a good problem to have.
All right, any other questions? All right. We'll move on to item number 6, discussion and possible action regarding an amendment of budget personnel action agenda item 3 from the June 30th, 2022 special meeting Fund 201 for the 2022 and 2023 fiscal year. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item number 7, no unforeseeable business. Item number 8, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.